Don Yanone, and I'm the CEO of the Growth Partnership for Ashtabula County. I'd like to welcome all of you to the kickoff of our new year. This year we have a theme that's going to guide the programs all the way through next May. And that theme is about futurizing Ashtabula County. You say, well, what does that mean? It means let's spend some time thinking together, looking not necessarily in a crystal ball, but in some ways looking down the road at what's coming at us in terms of technology, trends, big data, strategic planning, and a variety of other things that I know, based upon just other work I've had in other places, that these are things that are going to make their way here, and a lot of them are already here. And you're going to hear some indication of that today from today's speaker, and I will introduce him in just a minute. But I want to share with you a couple of things. For many years I've belonged to it's an international group. It's called the World Future Society. And basically want to share some things that are included in their 2015 outlook that looks out over the next 20 years. One of them is relates to jobs. Whether you believe the actual number or not by 2030, prediction is that you're going to see an obliteration of 2 billion jobs around the world. Now, those jobs are not going to disappear, but they're going to change into other kinds of work, which I think is very much an issue in terms of good news and bad news when you really think about that transition. And it speaks to our need to be ready as we really think about the transition and as people shift from the jobs that they're doing today to those that are coming at them in the future. Advances in artificial intelligence could create a rapidly accelerating economy, one that pushes more workers aside. So one of the things I think we need to do is really figure out how are we going to get ready for that? How do we get on the proactive side of change to make sure that we're a part of making change as opposed to really accepting change that's pushed in our direction. Predictions that a looming pension crisis could engulf state and local governments. We all know that the world does not have unlimited resources. The governmental sector doesn't, which is really a force for innovation. And it's been something that we've been on and off about in Ohio in terms of shared services and consolidation and really working together, which I think is a message for the future as well. Talent shortage, we know that as we look around at the employers all trying to find the best and the brightest to occupy available positions, it's going to grow. The question is, where does America come out? Where does Ashtabula County come out in that race to attract talent that we need to move our economy forward? The impact of the miniaturization, and our speaker will be able to give the more technical terms for this, but the fact that computer chips will shrink to the size of dust and become just as ubiquitous, I think is it's an amazing thought that they become embedded in everything. That we're going to see hybrid materials that will blend the properties of living and non-living things to really strengthen them as engineering materials and to do a host of other things that we've been trying to accomplish in terms of creating more energy efficient systems on all levels and all things. So just a few ideas that I think kind of point to some of the things ahead. And we all know that the internet is a part of our daily lives, but it's going even further and further out. So the question is, what does that all mean? And so that's really what we're going to hear about today from John O'Neill Sr., and John is the corporate IT director for the molded fiberglass companies. He's had over 20 years of experience in the IT industry and has had the opportunity to work as a consultant. He's an architect, executive. He does a lot of speaking. He's an author. He is from Ashtabula County, and he is obviously very plugged into what happens not just at molded fiberglass, but the community itself. He's a contributing editor of the Petrie IT Knowledge Database and senior contributor to Tom's IT Pro. He has been active as a speaker. John, I think you spoke just recently out on the West Coast for Microsoft. Has participated in all kinds of regional forums, Tech Mentor, Live 360, the Northeast Ohio Software Association CIO Summit, and a variety of other interesting venues that he's shared his ideas. And he's also proud to be a multi-year Microsoft MVP, and that's really a distinction when you think about all that it takes not only to learn those things, but to be able to put them to work. So with that, I'd like to invite John to come up, and let's all welcome John O'Neill.
Thank you, Don. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Don did a great job introducing me, so I don't have to spend a whole lot of time on that. As he mentioned, I am the Director of IT and the Chief Technologist for Molded Fiberglass Companies, headquartered right here in Ashtabula, Ohio. And yeah, I have to move or I start knocking things over. Because somebody didn't tell me that my mouth is what speaks, not my arms and legs, so yeah, well, it is. And on that note, I am also a speaker, obviously, or it would be really ridiculous for me to be up here right now. And while I've been honored to speak all over the country, from Florida to, as Don mentioned, Seattle just recently out at Microsoft, today is the most special event I have ever spoken at. This is the first time ever that my mother has gotten to witness me speak. So, so this is great. And it's here in my very own hometown. This is where I grew up. This is where I did all the things that I'm not going to tell you about, and a few that I am. So our topic for today is the Internet of Things. Who here has heard that term? Who here knows what that means?
That's why you're here, John.
Yeah. And let me tell you a little something about IT. We love acronyms, obviously, IT. And, you know, when I went to school here, and my dean is also in the house, so Dean McMahon. And when I went to school here, we called it computer science, right? Or they just called us nerds or geeks, and I'm okay with that. But then we evolved that acronym into IT, or IS, and that stands for Information Technology or Information Services. And that is the one that I hope sticks forever, because it really does define what we do and the value that we bring to an organization, whether it be an educational organization, a commercial organization, it doesn't matter. Information is the driver of our society, of our culture, right? Information is what has leapt us forward. When we developed the ability to communicate, we leapt forward. When we developed the ability to write that communication down, to record it in written form, we leapt forward, right? We weren't inventing information. We were inventing ways to transmit it, transfer it. And that has proceeded forward throughout our development as a culture, and culminated for our purposes, for computer science purposes, with the advent of the internet back in the 60s, which was a defense network. I think I blinked. And really what the internet is all about is unfettered communication. The ability to take that information that we've always had and move it faster than ever before. You see it today. There are people in this room, and I won't call anybody out, I promise, that remember the day of memos, right? I won't make you raise your hands, I promise. And you wanted to make a business decision or an organizational decision, you sent a memo and you waited. And the person received the memo and you waited. And they responded with a memo and you waited. And you got the memo. And now you're done waiting, you can actually do something. And that's the speed at which our businesses moved, our organizations moved. Now, you have a decision to make that involves other people, it happens like that. You send an email, they respond to that email, and that same thing that took hours or days now takes seconds or minutes. The direction of organizations changes multiple times each and every day. And it does that because information is flowing. And we flow information by connecting things, whether it be people, whether it be computers, whether it be that projector, whether it be your car. Does everyone here, does anyone in this room have a 2013 or newer GM product? Chevy? Yeah, we got a few. Your car has a connected computer in it. I mean, every car now has a computer in it, but modern GMs come with a 4G hotspot on them. They come with the ability to connect themselves to the internet without you adding anything. Which means, theoretically, your car can communicate with anything else connected to the internet, be it in Ashtabula, Ohio, the United States, North America, or the world. Because the same internet that car is connecting to here in Ashtabula, a computer in India is connecting to right now. And they can now exchange information in seconds. And one question I want you to walk away with today is not, well, how does that do something for me? How does that add value to me? It's not the ways we can think of that it adds value today. It's the ways we can't think of that will propel us forward, right? One thing I've kind of determined about significant change is it happens unexpectedly, right? Nobody expected Henry Ford to do what he did until he did it. And the same kind of thing is happening today. So now we take devices, and this is really what the Internet of Things means. So originally, the Internet, which IT people aren't really creative, right? We love acronyms, but we're not that creative. It just means internetwork. Network, connection of things. And originally, it was just connections of computers. And now, the deal is we're connecting everything. I mean, there are computer connections being made in people's shoes. Anybody here have an iWatch on their arm? Yeah, well, I guarantee you, you will interact with somebody today who does. And that watch is no longer about telling time. That's kind of just ancillary. That's old school. It's about telling you your heart rate, how far you walk, right? When you stand up, when you sit down. All the things that I don't want to know because then I feel compelled to like exercise. And you don't get all this by exercising regularly. And so it's a thing. And all the things in our lives are now being connected together to share information. Your microwave, your refrigerator, all being connected together. Well, why does that add value? Because now, and this theory has been around for a while, but the deal here is, of course, everything you buy has a barcode, right? We incorporate reading that barcode, which is just information, into the refrigerator, and when somebody pulls it out, the refrigerator knows that it's now gone, knows that you want to keep it, communicates across the internet to your favorite grocer. Could be Amazon. Amazon delivers groceries now. Anyone know that? Yeah? And all of a sudden, tomorrow, you get up and there's a package at your doorstep with that grocery that you just removed from your refrigerator yesterday and didn't tell anyone. Now, as far as our organizations go, I've given you kind of the funny stuff and the fun stuff. So now, let's break this down to how this is an economic driver. Well, what is an economy other than something that we use as people to live our lives, to evolve our communities, and to move forward as a society, right? If we all, you know, wanted to just sit and live in a field somewhere like they did, you know, 2 million years ago or whatever. And I'm not an anthropologist, so if there's any anthropology professors in the room, you can fail me. But we wouldn't need economies. Economies developed because we needed a way to conduct trade with one another, to give each other the things we want to lead our lives. Well, now, one, we still do have regional economies and national economies, but we operate on a much larger scale. Everyone here in this room is operating as a part of a global economy. It's not as it was when I was hatched into this world, right? Where really it was just whatever happened here kind of stayed here. It had a little bit of ripple out, but now we are affected by everything that happens the world over. Need proof? Look at the markets. Yesterday's tumultuous Dow Jones market is being blamed completely, or primarily, on what's going on in China. Who here 30 years ago, tell me, who here would have heard something about our Dow Jones market having anything to do with another country such as China? You wouldn't have. That's how the economy has changed. So, we have to participate in that economy, and we have to be better, faster, stronger than everyone else. Who here remembers that reference? I have some nods. I'm a geek, man. There's no way around it, right? I remember the $6 billion man, or $6 million man. I guess they didn't have billions back then. So, how do we do that? We do that by doing everything we've always done better, faster, stronger than we did it before. I have learned that the country that I am proud to be part of is the best ever at many things, but one thing in particular. We innovate. We have ideas, and we execute on those ideas better than any country in the world. There are other countries that are better at us at taking an idea that's been implemented and executed and perfecting it. There are countries that have larger workforces that are better at ramping it into cheap, large-scale production. But no one is better than us at coming up with some idea, turning it into reality, and bringing it to the world. I honestly believe that to my core. Now, my chosen field, you know, the geeky field, we have this awesome opportunity, unlike any other field, to touch every other field. Back to the Internet of Things. By connecting devices and allowing them to exchange information between every field, we allow connections between education, healthcare, manufacturing, not-for-profit, whatever it may be. And those connections can now share information, data, right? Our government can, yeah, sorry, I have to call Casey out. We have some government representatives here. And this is great because that's what this room should be. That's what we all should be looking for, is engaging every part of our community and society, right? We're all passionate about that. Why am I here above all else? Because I am passionate about IT and about the community in which I live, whether it be Ashtabula, Ohio, or the United States. And each of you are also. So, we take that healthcare example, and I am attaching monitors, and I am attaching devices that are used in healthcare for surgery and those kind of things, and that information is being recorded and aggregated, and I'm not trying to scare anyone into you know, conspiracy theories here, but that information then does things like allow our government to see where we have health problems developing, right? If a community has a sudden surge in high blood pressure related problems, there might be some ancillary event, right? It could just be a general economic downturn. It could be a indicator of something in the community, but it's an indicator. It's information that then others can act upon. Manufacturing, which is near and dear to my heart. Oh, and before I get off the healthcare thing, I love to look people in the eye. I love communicating. And unfortunately, I blew a blood vessel in my eye. I promise you I am not the start of the zombie apocalypse. Although some that know me might disagree with that. But yeah, if you came to hear really bad jokes, you came to the right place. Look, I'm scaring people out of the room already. So, okay, so now into manufacturing. Here's something about manufacturing. We still make parts just like we did 50 years ago. Right? Molded fiberglass, my company, makes parts today for the Corvette just like we did in 1953. The big difference isn't the fact that the part is shaped differently. Really, the press that makes it doesn't really care about that. It goes up and down the same way. It presses down the same way. The big difference is the customer, General Motors, requires far more information about the process and where it's going. You know, 50 years ago plus, when we built those parts, we took a whole bunch of parts and we stuffed them into a truck until it was full and we shipped them to GM. And they took them off that truck and they put them on shelves. And when they needed one, they went to the shelf and they got it. Now today, the parts that are being built here in Ashtabula today will go onto an assembly line in Bowling Green, Kentucky tomorrow. How much room for error does that leave? Very little, right? And here's another trick that's new. Those parts just aren't randomly in the truck because every Corvette has different holes in it. This one might have 6 speakers, that one has 8 speakers. Right? This one might have T-tops, that one has a convertible top. And since we're shipping them down and they're literally taking them off the truck and putting them on the line, we have to ship them down in the order they will be built. So General Motors tells us, hey, next week we're going to build these 1,000 cars. We need them to come to us in this order. And we say, wow, okay. And we build those parts and we drill the holes exactly as they said and we put them in that truck in the exact reverse order that they told us. Because the first one they need is going to be, has to be at the back of the truck. So our computer systems actually have to automatically flip everything. Right? And our teammates don't really see all of this happening. This is where that Internet of Things comes in. This is where that value add comes in from technology. The technology is keeping track of that information flow. It's keeping track of this press is making that part. This part is over here at this stage. This is here. This is the order we're loading it. These 6 are on this rack. That rack is at the front. This rack goes on top of that rack, and so on and so forth. To the point where thousands of cars are being built each week off of trucks in exactly the same order, boom, 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 without fail. Because if it fails, if somebody puts the wrong part in the wrong order, the entire assembly line has to stop. Anybody that knows anything about manufacturing knows if you stop an automotive assembly line, you just spent a whole bunch of money really fast. I mean, like copious amounts, like I could retire early. So that is all enabled by the Internet of Things, by us connecting machines. Our presses know now when they're up and when they're down. They know they have produced part 3, meaning the next part that goes in should be part 4. Our drill fixtures that drill the holes for those speakers, right? They scan in, they know they're supposed to drill 6 holes instead of 8 holes. And what happens if I break any of that communication between any of these things? Bad things. Bad things. Right? I drill 8 holes instead of 6. That 8-hole part now ends up on the truck where a 6-hole part is supposed to end up, and the assembly line stops. So, what does all this mean for economic development? Well, first off, we need to show those people, those customers we're trying to attract, right, those businesses or whatever, that we understand that the things we do today are different than the things we did yesterday. that we understand that they need an evolving community, workforce, healthcare system, education system, whatever it may be. And I get a lot of mixed emotions on this one, and I get it. There is comfort in the known. I am as comfortable and as comforted by the known, by the lack of change, as everyone else. But I am lucky and blessed enough to be educated in the reality of what's coming, which is the unknown, right? And we turn it into the known by embracing it, by pulling it to us, and by saying, hey, we're going to be experts at this, and here we go. 3D printing. Everyone here familiar with 3D printing? Okay. 3D printing is actually called additive manufacturing. Because what is manufacturing? It is producing something, right? And that's what 3D printing does. And 3D printing uses print technology, right? Box, print head, material delivery. You're used to it, it's delivering ink. All somebody did was had this great idea. I mean, these things always get me. You ever think about this for a second? Every little widget you look at, every little thing you look at, and you're like, man, in a whole world of a billion some people, billions of people, one person, one gal or guy said, we really need plastic cups. And plastic cups were born. Hey, I went with plastic cups. I could have gone with the little thing on the end of my shoelace. Or straw. Forks. Forks were a big one. Although I imagine, you know, food services industry was a whole lot different when you didn't have forks. Like I said, bad jokes all day long. So, additive manufacturing takes and replaces that ink with some material. And this is what somebody thought of in their head. They're like, hey, I'll just take that same concept and I'll heat up some plastic and I'll put it down in very tiny droplets. When we're kids, we have toys to play with, right? Legos. Everybody here knows Legos, right? When we're very little, we start out with really big Legos. Try and make a model of the Empire State Building out of like the Duplo big Legos. You end up with a square with a single one on the top kind of thing. And then as we get older, we get smaller Legos. And now we can make more refined, more feature-rich objects. Well, that's all 3D printing really did, was it said, hey, if I make it really, really small, as tiny as possible, I can make really, really detailed objects. And now, because we're putting down drops of material, molten plastic or ABS, whatever you want to use, we're able to add it together into really awesome shapes, really anything we want. And the next evolution of that, and it's already being worked on, is doing it with organics. Okay, and this is, Don kind of alluded to this in his introduction. The next evolution of our ability to gather and communicate information comes with organics. Because in inorganics, we're limited to the size of the carbon atoms that we're dealing with and those sorts of things. In organics, we can create connections that we've never imagined before. For instance, there is work being done right now on organic storage where I will be able to store the entire text ever written from stone tablet forward in a space no bigger than this. This little square right here. And the human race, this is something else that is awesome about us. All we need to drive us forward is the opportunity. So as soon as we have the opportunity to store and communicate more information, we will. I guarantee you. Right? We are not that far with the Internet of Things and the connection of things. We are not that far from ambulances and safety forces that can be dispatched a little before an event happens, right? Somebody has that iWatch on and it reports that a heart attack is imminent. Maybe they get a 30-second head start. Anybody here in healthcare? 30 seconds means something when it comes to a heart attack? Yeah. And all that's empowered by this Internet of Things, by taking devices and putting them forward. So, back to that economy thing, and you notice I jump around, it's just to keep you awake. It was either that or I could jump up on the table and start singing, and trust me, you want the first one. So, we need to tell manufacturers, we need to tell organizations that are coming that, hey, we understand you make a product and that is core to what you do, or you deliver a service and that is core to what you do. But we also understand that we want to give you an edge over everyone else who makes a similar product or delivers a similar service. And the means by which we're going to do that is by embracing and empowering the flow of information. We're going to improve our communications infrastructure. The United States, this is embarrassing, communications were born here, right? Remember? We innovate. We create. We now have one of the worst communication infrastructures in the entire world. We hung a bunch of wires and said, well, I guess we really don't have to do anything until they fall down, apparently. And so therefore, we hinder our ability to create that information flow. When companies or organizations come here and we tell them it is going to cost you 10 times more to get a connection to the internet at a certain speed, at a certain rate, than it is for you if you build in Aberdeen, South Dakota, they're going to factor that in. Those aren't small amounts anymore. And they're not ancillary. It's not about creating connections so that they can do online baking. It's about creating connections so that they can transmit their needs to their downstream suppliers. It's about creating connections so that their customers, their stakeholders can look into operations and see where efficiencies are running today. Anybody else here in the manufacturing world? Yeah, a few of you? Efficiency is king, isn't it? And 20 years ago, we looked at efficiencies hours later, or worse, days later. That doesn't cut it today, does it? You'll be eaten alive by your competitors if you're measuring your efficiencies tomorrow. Because they're measuring them today and they're making small, tiny adjustments. And they take their efficiency from 10% down to 8%, while yours is operating at 12%. The same thing happens with education. Anybody here in education? Yeah, I just had to ask that. Education is evolving. If you don't believe it, look at the amount of online learning. Kent State, when I went here, we had the video hookup in certain rooms to the main campus, remember that? And now you offer a good portion of your classes online, right? Students take them from home. We're evolving. We're connecting the students to the information, to the teachers, to the delivery mechanism in a different way than ever before, and we have to continue to do that. But that communication infrastructure that we haven't invested in gets in our way. So we have to make investments in that, and we have to convince people that are coming here, hey, we're making investments in these things. We have to convince them that we're making investments in our youth to keep them here and to keep them cutting edge, right? We all know how our kids have a much closer in-touch relationship with technology than us, right? Everybody here has had some problem that they've just gotten frustrated with and handed it to their kid to fix, or their neighbor's kid to fix, or somebody's kid to fix. Just give me a kid, somebody. The big driver for that is kids have no fear of the future. They don't fear evolution in terms of growth, right? And what I really mean by that is that they really don't care if they break it or not. But that one simple lack of fear has everyone in this room handing it off to a kid to fix. And we need to encourage that. We need to tell people, hey, this is why we have an edge when it comes to the Internet of Things. This is why we have an edge when it comes to technology, because we encourage our kids to turn that lack of fear into a focused sword that can be applied against the problems that they face. Right? Manufacturing faces ever-reduced margins. So we have to do things to cut out scrap. We have to do things to increase efficiency. We have no choice because that's the only way we can retain profit, because customers have said we're going to pay you less. Okay? So we need swords to cut through that problem in ways that aren't conventional, because we've used up all the conventional ways. And that means that as a community, we're going to have to come together and find ways to keep them here. Right? We're going to have to find ways to make that workforce and that infrastructure attractive to the companies that want to move forward. It's, for my perspective, and you know, anybody that knows me will tell you that my perspective is a little, we'll go with off. But from my perspective, our edge will be in our ability to tell incoming organizations or show incoming organizations how we're prepared to deal with the problems they haven't faced yet or haven't thought of yet. How we have dynamic thinkers. How we have organizations such as the Growth Partnership. And I was just hearing a great story about how that was formed in this very room. The idea was hatched in this very room. And that group of people walked into this room knowing of a problem that they faced, not knowing what the solution was, not knowing necessarily the problems of the future, but they said, hey, we need to attack that, we need to prepare, and a group was born that moved forward through time, and we're all here together, and you're getting to listen to my shtick. So it's the same kind of thing with technology. As everything connects to everything else, we will either be a community that is focused on building the pieces that somebody else puts together and enhances, or we will be a community that focuses on being the enhancers. And to me, the enhancers are the drivers. They're the ones that cause the community to grow. They're the ones that cause our healthcare to improve, our education to improve, our manufacturing to improve, everything to improve. Now, I don't know how I'm doing on time.
You're not great.
Not great, yeah. So I want to open it up to questions, comments. You're not allowed to throw things at me. I just want to make that clear. Particularly those in the front. Nothing? Yeah, shoot.
Where are the safeguards for the hackers? They get into one thing now and thousands of people.
They're a problem, right? And it's the same problem we faced since we all started coming together. You have those that want to live happily and be part of society and move things forward, and you have those that want to feed from the other group. Malware writers, hackers, cyber criminals, they are no different than the criminals that my parents dealt with or the criminals before, right? We developed liquor and prohibition, and people rose up to find ways around that, right? We have casinos where gambling takes place, and I'm not making any reference to yay or nay. All I'm simply saying is that any activity society has ever taken, there have been a group, a subgroup, that try to exploit it. The one thing that I do know is that we never want to let them convince us into being afraid of moving forward. We will combat them. We put in safeguards like, you have it in your computer. The anti-malware, the things that are designed to protect you from viruses, spyware, all that, is completely different than anyone could have envisioned it 5 years ago because it has adapted. The problem is criminals typically are better funded and they operate without rules. We don't. So I can't tell you that by connecting these things we won't have breaches. We will. And we'll answer. Our decision really comes from, do we want to just move forward with our plans and what we believe is right and put in the safeguards that we can and be prepared to deal with attacks? Or do we want to stop and disconnect? Because that is really the only solution, right? The only protected computer is the one that isn't connected to anything. And we can't evolve by doing that.
Could you give some specific examples of what we could do in our county to start moving into making ourselves more attractive to companies that want to use these?
Absolutely. Investment in communications infrastructure is key. Okay? Ashtabula County is still what we call a LEC environment, a local exchange carrier. You remember Ma Bell, right? Remember when you had the big AT&T and they broke up the bells and then you had a bunch of small phone companies. We have Continental Telephone Company and that kind of thing. The thing is we only really have one phone company in this area, don't we? In Ashtabula, do you have a list of people you can choose from to deliver your phone service? Hmm? And this is a fact. To get a T1, which is a connection to the internet, right? A high bandwidth one. Ashtabula, about $1,300 a month. Madison, about $600. Is it because their wires are better? Right? And so that alone, and if we're talking about an organization that needs to communicate, I mean, at MFG, we've made six-figure investments in connecting ourselves via fiber we've had run on our own because we need to communicate with other facilities. I mean, one of our data centers is here that feeds operations at entities as far as Mexico. So we can't have limited connectivity, right? And we built a facility in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And one thing about Aberdeen, South Dakota is it's South Dakota. And you wouldn't think that they have a highly evolved communications network. They have one of the best in the country. Everything is fiber optic in Aberdeen, South Dakota. So that reduces costs. I mean, just from a technology standpoint, that makes $15,000, $20,000 a month difference operationally for an organization of our size. You know, when I worked for Roadway Trucking a number of years ago, I did consulting for them, and their communications network, they spent $1 million a year on that communications network just on their own. That's the investment they made. And you know what that investment turned into? You now track your packages, because we can't wait for anything, can we? We have to know where they are right every minute. How does that happen? Their trucks are connected to a network, which connects to servers, which connect to other servers, which connect to your computer and allow you to see that, you know, your daughter's 1,500th pair of boots are about to arrive today. I'm a little sensitive about that.
I don't understand what you're saying. Is the government supposed to build these systems out, or you're saying there's only one phone company here? Are we supposed to attract another phone company? We do have C224, Windstream, and we've got the other Time Warner type of situation.
And so thank you for clearing that up. We need multiple levels of investment. What we need to change is our communication infrastructure, right? It's like having bad roads between the city you need to commute to. To make that investment is going to require private dollars from the organizations that are here. It's going to require government involvement in terms of getting us deregulated to where other companies can come in and make investment. Okay, and it's going to require technological innovation. The reason that you have, for instance, Time Warner in the phone game now isn't because they've adapted anything in terms of the phone lines. They've just come up with technology that allows them to deliver it across the same wire they were always using to deliver your cable. Right? So now they can offer you phone service or communication service. And really, we're not talking about phone, we're talking about machine to machine. Right? You have cellular carriers that are doing it. Verizon is making an investment, AT&T is making an investment into 4G, and now we have wireless communications. But all those things have to come together. So there isn't a single entity that can address this problem. Businesses have to do it. Carriers have to do it. Windstream has been loath, Windstream, which was Altel, has been loath to make investment in the county as far as changing out copper for fiber. Okay? Suite 224 is doing a lot running their own fiber to get connected, but they are not in every community on every street, right? Because it costs a lot of money to run that. So you get, and this is one of the things that advances deregulated areas like Lake County, where you can get not only Windstream, but you can get Sprint, you can get, well, it's not Sprint anymore, it's Century. Great big, busted into a bunch of smalls. The smalls are coming back together. It's like a bad cartoon. So all your communications carriers are actually being swallowed up and coming back together. And why are you seeing so much change? Because of what we just talked about. That communication network is key to connecting device to device, organization to organization. So yeah, if you were looking for my specific advice, I'd be grabbing government people, I'd be grabbing industry people, and I'd be grabbing communications carriers and putting them into a room and saying, here's what has to come out of this. We have to have the ability to connect our organizations as fast and as inexpensively as any other community can. Figure it out. And it'll, you know, start with some finger pointing, but eventually everyone will come together. Does that give a little bit more clarity? I wish it was something where I could say, hey, XYZ company needs to come in and invest $1 billion and we'd be done, but it's not. But and the problem will get bigger, and you've seen it. Who here has Verizon? Yeah, a few of you. Have you noticed the signal strength degradation in the last couple of months? Some of you have paid attention. Yeah, part of that's because they lost a tower. Cellular works on line of sight, so your phone has to be able to see, remember it's radio waves, so it can go through walls and that sort of thing, the towers that it connects to. And each tower can only support so many devices at one time. And to maximize their investment, they run it right to the limit before they build a new tower or they commission a new tower. And so that network is getting congested, which is causing the performance for all to drop. Right? And those are the kind of things that we as a community that's trying to drive forward with, hey, we're on the cusp of technology here. We need to be on them about those things, right? We need to be, hey, you need to have good ubiquitous cellular data coverage in this area without a problem. And there are communities that have done it and that are doing it.
John, I had one observation. One of the things that's been brought up a good bit is the issue of making sure that we bring people along. John Nesbitt said it in 1982 in his book Megatrends. He said, high tech, high touch. I wonder if he would speak to that issue.
Yeah. That's a very important one because we kind of started to talk about that a little earlier when I talked about comfort and stability, right? No change. You can't bring a community along by 10 people dragging everybody else, right? We have to do things like this where we talk about these are the challenges in front of us. This is how technology assists us. Technology, and this is absolutely true. Information technology doesn't exist for IT people. It exists for the organizations, for the people, the communities we serve. We always need to remember that. And sometimes that doesn't happen. A lot of people in technology get so excited about the technology, they lose sight of the fact that it has to serve someone or some purpose or something to be relevant. And that's how we get disjointed and we don't bring people along a lot of the times as we rush forward with that. In manufacturing, and yet I got to go with analogies of what I know, right? So in manufacturing that happens because we don't translate. We're in technology and we see this new tech that we need to implement and we don't do a good job of explaining it to the other stakeholders of the business of how it adds value into the manufacturing operation. So we don't bring them along. We don't show them that this is the path to increasing margins, to gaining customers, to reducing scrap, increasing efficiencies, whatever you want. In education, if you don't bring people along to the idea that, hey, conventional classroom learning alone doesn't fit with current societal needs. There are still a lot of people that believe that. Unfortunately, what's happening is those institutions that aren't embracing that are losing students. They're losing revenue streams, right? But then you also have people on the other side that are going with a full online learning content. I develop online learning for one of the leaders in that space, or the leader in that space, actually. And one of the things I try and do with them every time I meet with them is to convince them that extremes usually aren't the best course for anyone. So that hybrid model, that model that involves some personal touch, some of this, still has value for our society and where we are. It's funny that I say that because we could do everything we're doing right here without ever coming into this room, couldn't we? You could all listen to my very annoying, not teenage, but not quite adult voice over the internet. You didn't have to come here. You came here because we all still acknowledge a visceral value in gathering together, looking each other in the eye and talking. Salesmen still fly on airplanes. HR people still call people into the room. And I believe that has value, but to move them forward, we have to talk with them, find out the problems that they're facing, engage them into some technological concepts that will help with those problems, and bring them along. I don't want to say bring them to the dark side or the light side or anything else. I just want to say that it's not technology against everyone else. Technology is here to empower everyone else.
John, we want to thank you. Terrific job.